So this week, I have a really cool tool for you. The tool is a cons and pros list. We often think about a pros and cons list, but I want to really emphasize the pro part of this list, because sometimes when our kids are facing a decision that we think is going to go badly for them, and they haven't realized that yet, we forget the pros. So here's what this looks like. Let's say your teen comes to you with an idea that they haven't fully thought through yet, and that as you think about the idea, you're pretty sure it's going to end badly for them. And your inclination is to steer them in a totally different direction, to say, are you sure that's what you want to do? I don't think that's going to end well. And we all know what happens when we react that way to our teens. They shut down, a conflict could ensue, they feel not supported by you. So here's another way to do it. It's the same outcome. It helps get at the, are you sure that's a good idea? But it lets them come to that conclusion on their own. Teens are not great at seeing the forest. They see the trees, just this is how their brains work. This is how their brains are wired. There's a qualitative difference between the way teens think and adults think about situations. And adults can usually see the trees and the forest, but teens really just see the trees. So they need help zooming out for the forest. And so this is one way to do that. So let's say your teen comes to you, it's homecoming. Let's say it's this fall, it's homecoming. And they say, I have plans to ask someone to be my homecoming date. And you're like, really, that's wonderful. Who are you going to ask? And they name a child who runs in a totally different, more popular friend group than them, that they are not currently friends with, that they don't interact with. And you're pretty sure that that person doesn't either know your kid, or if they do know them, probably has reason to not say yes as the homecoming date. And you can foresee rejection or humiliation for your teen. And your inclination is to go, are you sure that's a good idea? Which kind of rains on your kid's parade at a minimum, and at a most can incite conflict between you and your teen. So here's where managing parental distress comes in. I say this over and over again. So instead of that knee-jerk reaction to tell your kid to take a different path, say, oh, that's interesting. Well, if you decide to do that, what do you think the pros will be? What do you think the good stuff that will come out of that choice will be? And your kid may say, well, all my friends are going to homecoming with a date, and I don't want to be the only one without a date, so I'll have one. Okay, so now we know something that your child wants, which is to go to a dance with a date, and also to not feel like an outsider with his friend group or her friend group or their friend group. And you say, okay, well, that's a pro. Yeah. What else? What are some other good things that could come of this? Oh, well, I might get to know so-and-so better. I've always wanted to be friends with them. Sure. Yeah, you could make a friend out of this. What else might come of it? And you can really dig for the pros, because there'll come a point where they come up short, where they're like, yeah, I don't know what else. You say, okay, so if you decide to do that, you've got a few things that could go well. And then you say, and how about the cons? What might not go so well? Oh, well, so-and-so might say no. Yeah, could you handle that? Would that be okay? Do you have a plan for handling that? Or they might say yes, but not mean it. Or they might say yes and go to the dance with me and not spend any time with me. And so I'd have this date, but it would be totally awkward because we don't even talk. And oftentimes what happens, if you can get kids to start seeing the potential drawbacks in a way that they discover it because you've asked the right open-ended questions, like what are some of the cons? That's a great open-ended question, but you can't ask it until you've asked the pros, until you've heard like why they're even considering this. They'll come to the conclusion like, oh yeah, maybe this isn't my best idea. In which case you as the parent can say, well, who knows? Maybe it isn't, but it sounds like you're interested in asking someone out to homecoming. Are there other people who might be more likely to say yes, or who you know better and it would be less awkward? And then your kid's on a different trajectory. It takes more time to do this. It's slower. It requires a parent sitting with their own knee-jerk reaction to be a roadblock for their kids' decision-making. This instead requires you to actually like walk alongside your kid on the decision-making path. And instead of standing in their way, you're kind of pointing out up ahead, you know, there's a fork in the road. Let me help you decide which path to walk down while we're approaching it slowly and without pressure. Because sometimes I think when our teens come to us with decisions that we can tell aren't going to go well, we feel pressure to make those decisions for them ahead of time so that they won't encounter the distress that we can envision for them. So this all comes from a place of love, that we sometimes act as roadblocks instead of, you know, partners on their path. So this is, like I said, this is called a pros and cons list, but I like to call it a cons and pros list because I want to emphasize the pro, the positive, and you have to do that in order to get to the con, so your kid can consider that. I have used this time and time again with my own children, in my counseling office, as a school counselor and as a therapist, and it tends to really work quite well. And it makes the kid feel like you're on their team, which is exactly what we want our children to feel, like we've got their back and that they have the agency to make choices on their own. If you use this and it goes well, please send me an email, sam@teensavvycoaching.com, or let me know on Instagram or Facebook, and I will be happy to celebrate with you. If you use this and you have questions about it, or you have questions before you use it, again, reach out. I read everything, all the comments and all of the emails that I get, and I respond to them personally. And one last plug, the Teen Savvy Parenting Masterclass, which is a class full of tips like this, and much more, is filling now. It's a 12-week program that starts August 28th, and it's online. It involves weekly group meetings, as well as several one-on-one coaching experiences during the 12 weeks. And there's a $500 discount for enrollment that will go away August 1st. So if you've been sitting on it and you're thinking about it, now's your moment. Act soon, book a discovery call. If you book a discovery call before the end of the day on July 31st, the call doesn't have to take place by then, but if you book it by then, you will still be eligible for the discount. So if you're even remotely curious, give it a shot, reach out, and I'd be delighted to talk with you. And I look forward to hearing from you as you give this tool a try in your own parenting life. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you next week.